What's up guys, I'm Mike, the Weird Pigeon of Weird Pigeon Productions, and you clicked on this video so you already know what it's about. Today we are going over the top 10 best shots, what I think are the top 10 best shots, of Star Wars A New Hope. We're going to be talking about the lighting, the color, the composition, the sound design, the music. We are really going to be analyzing the cinematic qualities of these shots and what makes them great and where they fall short in some areas. And of course, with this being A New Hope, this movie's been through lots of special edition changes, adjustments, things have been swapped out, scenes have been added, all sorts of stuff has been done to this movie. I'm gonna try to look at this movie without taking any of these special edition enhancements or adjustments into consideration. Now, with that being said, what exactly is a shot? A shot is the filming of a scene from camera rolling until it stops or cuts from a given angle or movement. Pretty much when the camera cuts, that's the end of the shot. And what we're looking at after that cut is the beginning of the next shot. So some of these shots really only last a few seconds, and there are thousands upon thousands of shots in this film. Now, of course, when you take all these different shots and you add them together, it creates a scene, but we're not looking at scenes. We are looking at one specific shot. Also, as we go through some of these top 10 shots, you're gonna probably notice that this movie in some areas is a little rough. And really that's because this movie wasn't meant to be analyzed like this. It also wasn't meant to be watched in 4K. The version of the film that I looked at to make this video is what's been released on Disney+, so it's in 4K. And when I mean this movie was shot on a low budget, back in 1977, the budget for this film was around $9 to $13 million, which that is a lot of money, especially back in 1977. But when you adjust it to inflation to today's standards, you're looking at roughly $50 to $55 million. Just to kind of put that into perspective, the latest Star Wars movie, Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker, cost around $275 million to make. So you can't really expect this movie to live up to some of the more modern Star Wars films. And of course, when you look at how far technology has advanced in over 40 years, it's really hard to compare the original Star Wars movie with something that's brand new. And a lot of the shots, especially the special effects shots in this film, were really only meant to be seen once for just a few seconds. So without any further ado, let's get into this top 10 list with shot number 10. This shot is the shot where Princess Leia is giving R2-D2 the Death Star plans inside the Rebel blockade runner. What I really like about this shot is just the dimensionality and the depth in the image. It's this weird space hallway. You've got these leading lines that kind of draw you into your subject, draw you into Princess Leia, into R2-D2. And it's a pretty important part of the plot because it really is what gets the story going. The music is really soft. I believe this is also Princess Leia's introduction. But what I don't like about this shot and what makes this number 10 of our top 10 list is the fact that the background's a little blurry. I do like the fog, this sort of mist that's in the background. It adds a bit more atmosphere to the scene, especially since there's just a massive firefight inside this ship. There's a lot of smoke from the lasers hitting stuff. However, I do think it takes away from just the sharpness and clarity of the image. Also, this seems kind of weirdly lit. You have some pretty bright light on the outside of the frame, but as you go in deeper, it gets darker. And really that center area is where the focus is supposed to be, and it's darker than the outside of the shot. However, I do think this is still a pretty cool shot, and I just like the dimensionality to it. Now this next shot, shot number 9, you probably don't even remember this shot at all. If you blink, you pretty much miss it. However, I like this shot. It's a bit obscure, but there is really a lot to look at and kind of pick apart here with this particular shot. What happens here is Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi sell Luke's speeder to some random alien, and then they turn a corner and we see the Imperial spy agent alien dude notices them and starts to follow them. What's super awesome about this shot is just the amount of stuff in the shot. There's lots of costumes, characters, there's tons of stuff in the background, in the foreground, in the midground, and it really helps build up this busy, crowded street in an alien universe. One thing that you see with this movie, because, well, they didn't really have a lot of money, is there aren't too many wide shots that show just tons of stuff, because they didn't have tons of stuff with their budget. And really, they did a lot of different tricks with this shot to make it look a little denser packed than it actually is. You get a lot of creatures and aliens walking across the camera. That creates more of a crowded feel and adds more depth to the shot. What's really cool too is just the attention to detail. You have Jawas in the corner, just chilling out. You've got trash and different items laying around. You have what looks like a little droid floating around in the background for just a split second. probably was added in one of the special edition changes, but I'm going to talk about that just because I think it is neat and it adds to this scene. Another thing I never actually noticed with this shot, and you're going to hear this a few times throughout this list, is I've seen this movie like a million times, but going through and watching it shot for shot and analyzing these shots, I've picked up on a lot of stuff that I never actually noticed. Like the fact that this character here is carrying the famous ice cream maker from episode 5. If you don't know what that is, there's a character in episode 5 who's running through Cloud City, and he has a massive, what looks like an ice cream maker under his arm. And this actually isn't an ice cream maker, of course. It has a name for the object in the universe. It's called a Camtono, and you probably recognize this object from The Mandalorian. It is what the Mandalorian gets paid with when he receives the metal to make his armor. And it's also seen in season 2 for a quick scene. What this object basically is in universe is it is pretty much like a metal briefcase. It is almost like a portable safe that contains rare items, items of value, things like that. Money, jewels, precious metals, whatever. And after watching this movie probably like a million times, I never noticed that we actually see this object in A New Hope. So that was pretty cool. Now, one thing that I guess is a little bit of a negative with this scene is we actually see Greedo again. And of course, by now, Greedo's already been shot and he's dead in the cantina, but they reused his costume for this scene. And actually, there's quite a few scenes where they reuse Greedo's costume. And again, this is just because they didn't have a massive budget. They wanted to fill these streets with tons of different aliens, and so it's pretty clear that they had to reuse some costumes just to make things feel a little more dense. But again, he only appears for like less than a second, and there's a bunch of other stuff in the shot. It's really hard to notice. And now moving on to shot number 8, we have Luke Skywalker training with Obi-Wan Kenobi inside the Millennium Falcon. I love this shot. Not only is it well composed, but again, there's lots of detail in this shot. There aren't, a flood of characters like the last shot, but there's just detail all over the set. You have pipes running in and out of the Millennium Falcon. You've got random items, trash, tools, cargo, everywhere. You've even got what looks like Han Solo's lunch sitting on this little computer desk. But what to me makes this shot so special is the fact that it uses multiple special effects. You have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. You have the training remote that's floating around. You have the Dejarik holochess table that Chewbacca, R2-D2, and C-3PO are playing on. And what's really neat about this shot too is the fact that Luke Skywalker actually walks from one side of the frame to the other, crossing the holochess table. And really, these special effects, of course, are added in later in post. And what's neat about the Dejarik table is it was actually photographed in stop motion, and they just took the video that they made from that stop motion and added it into the scene. But in order to have Luke Skywalker walk across that, they have to, in a sense, key out that effect as he walks across, which would have been really time consuming. And it just adds to the fact that ILM, when they made these special effects, did just an incredible job. And it's just really neat to see that a lot of these practical special effects really hold up well today. Moving on to shot number 7, we have the establishing shot for the Rebellion hangar, their little base on Yavin 4. I absolutely love this shot because to me it looks like a gorgeous painting. It looks so realistic. There's a lot of special effects happening in this shot. But first of all, you look at the composition, it's awesome. You look at the foreground, you have these plants, these trees. In the midground, you have all the characters, you have all the action going on. The background is just massive. And again, you don't get too many massive shots with this much realism and detail in this film compared to some of the other more modern Star Wars films. You've got different characters walking around, you've got Rebel soldiers walking around, you have the massive hangar door opening, and again, I never realized this, but you have the entire cast, Han Solo, Luke, Leia, Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO, hopping on these little tram vehicles. They've probably got a name, I don't know what it is. And the only thing that I feel like doesn't really work for this shot is if you look inside the hangar, you've got these X-Wings and Y-Wings, and they just don't look too real. They look kind of rough. But again, for the time this was filmed, and with everything else I've mentioned before, this shot looks absolutely incredible, and I love it. Now with shot number 6, we have something pretty similar. It's the establishing shot for the Imperial hangar. And what I love about this shot is this set is absolutely massive. I'm sure they spent a lot of money building this set, and it just shows with the scale, the enormity, the depth of this scene. And you have so many characters and costumes all being utilized in this shot as well. On top of that, there's lots of movement. You have stormtroopers coming up an elevator and walking across screen. You have what looks like engineers running across the stage. And of course you have Darth Vader, some stormtroopers heading over to meet an officer and a couple of stormtroopers coming out of the Millennium Falcon. Another thing with this shot is just the composition is beautiful. I love the composition of this shot. On top of that, I don't know which one of these things came first, but there is a Ralph McQuarrie concept art painting for Star Wars Episode 5 that uses pretty much the same exact composition with the Millennium Falcon for the Echo Base Rebel Hoth hangar. I just thought the similarities between these two shots was definitely something to make note of. And again, I don't know which one of these came first, the chicken or the egg, but either way, it's just a really neat detail that I just thought I'd mention for this shot. Also, another thing about all of the Imperial Death Star shots that you see in these films is just the creative use of lighting. They kind of had to hide lighting wherever they could in the shot. So you have these light panels on the walls, you have this massive light going around the edge of the hangar door area, shield thing, don't really know what you call that. Just a lot of really cool creative use of lighting because there weren't really any places they could put light in the Death Star set. And George Lucas has really said himself that the people who were on his side were the art department, the creators, the set builders, the prop makers. They had a fun time making this film and it really shows. They poured so much creativity and world building into it. I just love the fact that today you can still appreciate this film because of the love they put in over 40 years ago. Coming at the halfway point on our list, shot number 5, we have the Jawas carrying R2-D2 to the Sandcrawler. This shot, again, is just gorgeous. To me, this shot could be a Ralph McQuarrie painting. It's not, but it definitely could be. The Sandcrawler is just enormous in the image. You can really get to see some of the detail on it, some of the size, some of the scope of the Star Wars universe. But what to me makes this setting in this shot so beautiful is just the lighting. You have this setting sun going behind the mountains and this beautiful night sky with stars. It really creates a massive, beautiful sort of feel to this brand new universe that you're being introduced to with this film. And this attention to detail is what I think made this movie such a big hit for so many people. Also, the composition of this shot is very well done. I really like it when these filmmakers put a lot of thought into their composition, and it really shows with this shot. So that's all I really have to say for this one. Let's move on to the next one, shot number 4. All right, so next we have shot number 4. This is the shot where Darth Vader is interrogating a rebel officer inside the rebel blockade runner. I love this shot. I like this shot way more than the opening shot for Darth Vader when he walks into the scene. Even though it's so iconic, I think this shot is just better in pretty much every single way. We don't just see Darth Vader, we see him being Darth Vader. We see that not only does he look the part of the villain of the movie, but he is a villain. He's lifting this guy up by his throat, asking him questions. He's definitely not somebody you want to mess with. Also, what's neat about this shot is even though it's a very small set, we have a lot of depth to it. There's this hallway where you can see stormtroopers who have captured some rebel soldiers. There's stormtroopers that walk across the frame. You have dead rebel soldiers on the floor, stormtroopers standing guard all over the place, weird, alien technology in the spaceship. It's just a really cool shot that shows not only the villainy of Darth Vader, but a lot of thought that went into a very small set. Again, small budget, so it works. Again, the composition is okay in this shot, but it's pretty good. I don't really have anything that I don't like about this shot. I think it's pretty good. All right, so now moving into our top 3 shots, we have at shot number 3, the Millennium Falcon entering the Death Star. This was one of the shots that I thought of when I first thought about making this video. I absolutely love this shot because it is literally a recreation of a Ralph McQuarrie concept art painting. I love Ralph McQuarrie's artwork. I'll probably make a video on his artwork at some point in the future. One thing that I feel very passionately about is with cinematography, every shot you create should have the thought and the artistic value of a painting. So this shot being a literal recreation of a Ralph McQuarrie painting, I just think adds so much to the artistic value of this movie. I mean, everything about this shot is a recreation. You have stormtroopers in the foreground with these massive turbo lasers. You have the Millennium Falcon heading into a hangar. Even the tiny radar dishes and turbo lasers in the background at the bottom left are pretty much the exact same as it is in the painting. Just incredible shot. And the composition is really good as well. Coming in at spot number 2, we have the throne room master shot. Again, this shot is somewhat of a recreation of a Ralph McQuarrie painting, not exactly, but I just think it's a gorgeous image. You have the main heroes walking forward, about to receive their medals from Princess Leia. Unfortunately, Chewbacca doesn't get one. As far as composition goes for this shot, it's just beautiful. I love the just the massive lines that are created with the image that kind of draw you into the subject. They create this big line straight through the middle. It's just a well-composed shot. And again, another thing about this shot is the scale, massive scale. And of course, I know that a lot of the people in this shot were added in digitally with the special editions. And I know I wasn't really gonna look at that too much, but it does add to the scene. and it does create a more grand sort of feel to what the heroes just did, and it adds more to the ceremony. Now, before we get to our number one shot of the film, I do have a few honorable mentions. Of course, there are thousands of shots in this movie, some of which are just really incredible, and I would have loved to include on this list, but there's just something holding me back from doing that. So I just want to mention 5 shots real quick, and of course these are in no particular order of how much I like them. Our first honorable mention is Luke confronting Han Solo in the Rebel hangar. I love this shot because of just everything going on within it. You have X-Wings and Y-Wings getting worked on, you have Han Solo loading his stuff, you know, with Chewbacca. You've got a droid being lowered into an X-Wing. You have engineers, soldiers, rebel pilots all running around. Everybody's frantically scurrying in it, and I think it really adds to the suspense of what's about to happen. The Death Star is on its way to destroy their base. They have to scramble all their troops. It makes the rebellion feel a little more chaotic when you compare it to the well-organized, well-established Empire. I also really like that clearly they added this ramp just for R2-D2 to kind of go across for this shot. But the reason I did not include this in the list is because of the fact that if you look at the background, it's just nothing. It's blank, it's dark. The lighting in this shot is kind of used to hide the fact that they didn't have the money to make a massive hangar, which, you know, there's more ships in this hangar. You know this hangar is massive and huge because you see some other shots of it. But again, because they didn't have the money to build a massive hangar or the technology to include, you know, stuff in the background, you just don't see it. And to me, it kind of takes away from the realism. It works for the few seconds this shot lasts, but again, it just kind of takes away from the value of this shot, which is why it's not on the list. Next honorable mention is what I'm calling the Rebel Guard on Instagram. It looks like he's holding a smartphone in his hand. Clearly it's not a smartphone, it's some Star Wars thing or whatever, I don't know what it is. But it looks just like a smartphone. It's almost like he's checking Instagram, just like scrolling, just chilling while he's on guard duty. He's probably writing something like #RebelLife, I don't know. It's so dumb. But I really like the composition of this shot. I think it works really well. I like how it's like an early morning, foggy sort of morning shot. I just think, again, this shot's beautiful. It's almost like a painting. I also really like that you can kind of see the sun there through the fog in the bottom left corner. That's pretty cool. I like this shot. It's just not really special enough to include in the list. Third is the tractor beam shutdown, and there's actually 2 wide shots where we get to see this. The first one I think is pretty meh, because you can easily tell there's a matte painting there beneath him. And of course, this has been digitally enhanced to kind of remove some of the matte painting lines, but it's still pretty obvious, and I don't think that works as well. This shot is much better. It's framed up higher, you don't see the matte painting, but what you do see is depth, a lot of depth and dimensionality. The composition of the shot's really good, and I like the fact that there's lots of movement as well with the stormtroopers in the background, with Obi-Wan Kenobi trying to hide from them, but also turn down the tractor beam. A really well-composed shot, lots of depth, looks really nice, but again, not too much special going on here. Second to last honorable mention is what I think is a really nice nod to an Akira Kurosawa samurai film. We have Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader battling it out with the Imperial hangar and the Millennium Falcon in the background with stormtroopers who turn it to basically watch them all fight. Again, the way this shot is composed is beautiful. I love this frame within a frame that they create with the doorway. I also like the way that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Darth Vader are staged within the shot. They really look like, you know, they're samurai, which, if you didn't already know this, a lot of Star Wars was inspired by old samurai films from Akira Kurosawa. If you want to know more about that, I've made a video on it. You can check that out right here or down in the description. Our final honorable mention is the opening grand shot. Everybody knows this shot. I didn't really want to include it because even though it's a beautiful shot, it's a great special effects shot, especially for its time, and it establishes the setting, the action, it shows the Empire, the Rebellion. It's just so well known, and I feel like it'd be almost cliche to include it in this video. And again, besides the fact that it's a great special effects shot, there's not much amazing about it. The composition's okay, and there's a little bit of movement, but it's just pretty basic and already so well known. I wanted to mention it, but I didn't think it deserved a spot on the list. Now, with all of that said, I'm about to be a bit of a hypocrite here, because if you haven't already guessed it, the #1 best shot is Luke Skywalker on his moisture farm looking at the twin suns setting. This shot is one of the most iconic and beautiful shots in Star Wars. How could I not make this #1? Not only is it well composed, the music's incredible, the lighting is gorgeous, the color is amazing, and it is such an important shot in this film. It begins the hero's journey that Luke Skywalker goes on for not only this film, but the next 2, and even, you could argue, into the sequel trilogy. There's so much I just love about this shot, and I prefer this shot over the one that comes right after of Luke Skywalker because, again, you just get to see more of the environment. There's more scale to it. I like this little kick that Luke Skywalker does as he's walking up to the top of this little opening there in his house. Again, this is probably one of the most beautiful shots of Star Wars and my favorite shot of this entire film. So guys, did you enjoy my list? If you've got some other shots that you really liked in this movie, feel free to comment what they were. It took a lot of time going through analyzing this movie shot for shot and then breaking down these shots and what I liked about them cinematically. So if you definitely enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a like. That would help me so much. My channel's still fairly new, and even though it's slowly growing, I put so much time and effort into my videos, it really would mean a lot if you left a like. Also, if you like this video and you want to see more like it, this is the first video of a series I'm going to be doing. Basically, I'm going to be going through all the other Star Wars movies just like I did this one and analyzing my top 10 favorite shots along with honorable mentions and what I liked about them. So if you like this video, you want to see more, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification to stay notified on my videos. And if you're also into photography and videography, I make videos on those topics as well. So I'd really appreciate a subscription. And if you really like to hear me talk and ramble on, I have a podcast with a friend of mine. It's really awesome. It's great. We talk about whatever's on our mind. It's called the On Mind Podcast. The link to that is in the description. I'd really appreciate it if you check that out as well. But that's pretty much it for this video. I will see you guys in the next video. Peace. And yeah, that's pretty much it.